Hey folks, what's up? How's it going? How's your February been? February. Do you pronounce the R in February? Anyways, how's your February been? Mine has been pretty good, thanks for asking. So today I'm gonna be going over some of my favorite things from the past month. I know it's only been a 28-day month and we're coming up on the end of that here pretty soon. But I figured I'd go over some of the things that I found this month or have dived into a little bit more that I've really enjoyed. So I've got a few categories. We've got a coffee bean that I really like. I've started a long-term project with a cocktail, which I think is really cool that you guys are gonna enjoy. As well as I'm gonna show you one of my favorite things that I've made in the past month that I think is easy and achievable that anybody can make at home. And it's also vegan. So that's a win right there. Let's get into it. So this is actually the bean I wanted to show you guys. This is a Norwegian roasting company. It is woman-owned. It is operated by one of the best roasters in the business. Particularly this bean I find very, very interesting. So the bean itself is actually from Indonesia and it tastes like grape. The main tasting note is just a purple grape emoji. And that pretty much sums up the bean. It doesn't have like a lot of acidity. It's not super chocolatey. But what I love about it is that when you smell it, when you're grinding the bean or when you're making the cup, or even just like tasting the cup in general, you get this bright red grape flavor, which I think is super interesting that you can get that from a coffee bean. And so I'm just gonna make a little cup of this real quick, and then we're gonna taste. I feel like every time I taste this coffee, I just like get a lot of grapey flavors. Like it doesn't hit you at the initial point when you think, okay, like a bright acidic coffee, like you have a little zap in the beginning, but this one doesn't have that. Like it's a little bit more mellowed out in the beginning, and then as it trails on, you start to get more of those purpley notes. And it's really hard to describe it anything but purple, which is why they didn't really add a bunch of tasting notes on this bean. It's just grape, which is great. But since we're on the theme of beverages right now, I figured I might as well show you guys something that you might not have seen before. All right, check this out. You guys have seen our coffee setup. You've seen Jasper, but right underneath here, this is our liquor cabinet. And what is this, you might ask? It's just an endless cycle of barrel-aged Negroni, which is amazing. So you might be asking yourself, what does a little barrel like this do for me at home? And the honest answer is, it's fun. If you see any red bits here on the bottom, that's because I probably didn't soak it properly. It's been a pretty cool project so far. Negroni is equal parts Campari, vermouth, and gin. 300 milliliters of each. I put a funnel into the top of the barrel and I just poured it all in. And I let it sit for a week or two. In doing this, now I have a more rounded flavor. I've got a lot of oak on the nose as well as on the palate. And it just gives me a little bit more of a cohesive unit of the drink. So first, I'm just gonna show you guys how to make a Negroni real quick. And then I'm just gonna stock it up as I take more out. So making the easiest cocktail ever, it's 1 ounce of gin. I'm using the Nikka coffee gin. So this is actually a gin from Japan. You need this. It needs to be the Rosso from Martini. It doesn't have to be Martini brand, but it's gotta be a sweet red vermouth. And finally, Campari. You can't really go wrong with this. It's very simple. I think this one was like $12. This one was like $8. And then this was the expensive part. You don't have to go as expensive. I think I paid $75 for this bottle and I used quite a bit of it in this, but you can use whatever gin you have available. I wouldn't necessarily use Empress gin or something purple just because in the Negroni you want it to be a more red color. So first let's just do 1 ounce of gin. Ounce of sweet vermouth, and finally 1 ounce of Campari. And that's pretty much it. Normally you'd garnish this with a big ice cube as well as an orange zest, but instead of garnishing this right now, we're actually just gonna pop it right back into the barrel. Open it up, my little makeshift funnel here, and just pour it right in. Wow, look at that laminar flow. That's physics. And now, let's just make a Negroni. One thing that is really nice about this drink is that it doesn't need the oak barrel. So if you do decide to put it in and it hasn't got that oaky flavor, it's still gonna be a delicious cocktail. And you can make it on its own in, I don't know how long that took me, like 30 seconds. And then to get the Negroni, all you do is make sure the glass is underneath right away. you take the lid off, a little cork at the top, then pour spout to your desired level. And then a little bit of orange zest and this would be great. So now let's try this Negroni. Oh, that's good. That's so good. This has been one of my favorite experiments that I've done at home, just because imagine going over to somebody's house and they're like, hey man, you want a drink? I'm like, yeah, I would love a drink. And they say, how about a barrel-aged Negroni? One more thing that I would like from this is the perfectly clear ice cubes, which you can do with boiling distilled water and then putting in a freezer bag into the freezer so it cools slower. So you can also do it with like a cooler or something. It just like slows the freezing process of the ice. You obviously don't want to touch it until it's fully frozen, but then that's going to give you those super clear ice cubes that when you pop it in, it's just going to look like nothing's in there. And speaking of learning new things, a big shout out to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creators. Whether you're into coffee, cocktails, cooking, web design, photography, woodworking, whatever you're into, they probably have a class for it. Unlimited knowledge! Recently, I've been diving into the class, Creating Your Own Signature Drink by Ivy Mix. What I really like about this class is how they go over the thought process of creating your own cocktail. Whether that's from the skeletal inspiration to the garnish to the final product of your own drink. Skillshare is specifically created for learning, so there's no ads, they're constantly adding new programs, and it's 100% self-motivated, so you can go at your own pace. Since we all love a good deal, for the first 1,000 of you guys that click my link in the description, you'll get 1 month free trial of Skillshare. So you can start diving in all those creative topics you want to learn about. Thank you Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and let's get on with my next favorite. I've made quite a few dishes over the past month, being at work or at home, and the one that I really like the most, I think, is japchae, which is sweet potato glass noodles from Korea, a bunch of veggies in it. It's soy sauce, sesame, oyster sauce, very delicious. It's super easy and vegan. So let's make that. The most important part of making japchae, Korean glass noodles. If you don't have this, it's not japchae. I like mushrooms in mine, a lot of mushrooms. Spinach is a classic, some julienne carrot, sliced onion, garlic, obviously. I'm gonna add some garlic scapes and a shit ton of green onion. And for a little bit of protein in this, we're just gonna do a little bit of smoked tofu. You can do beef or you can do pork or whatever you want in it, really. So we're just gonna take some of these glass noodles here and just pop it right in. And when the noodles are not crunchy anymore, they have a nice little bite to it, but they're not too firm, we're just gonna strain it off and rinse it under cold water. Our pan is hot. And once your mushrooms look like this, just slap a bunch of these veggies in there. Once it's all sauteed and tasty, let's just add in some spinach. Yeah, why not? Let's add in some spinach, we'll add our green onions. We'll add in our noodles. Now I know I said this was vegan, but the only reason I'm adding the oyster sauce is because it's just delicious and it really helps. So if you want a vegan meal, it doesn't need this. So, and finally, you can take your favorite pair of snips and just cut up the noodles inside the pan. Just straight into the plate. So this is generally a side dish or a banchan in Korea, but I like it enough that I can just make it as a meal or have it like as a little cold salad in the fridge. Let's add in some freshly toasted sesame seeds and a little bit of green scallion oil. Looks delicious. Sliding a little bit on the plate, but that's all right. So as much as I love this dish hot, I actually prefer it cold. You just throw it in the fridge as it is, let it sit, and all those flavors are just gonna bind all together. But anyways guys, that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and we will see you guys next time. All right, peace out.